Back then, there wasn't Facebook. It was really hard to meet up with people. But my brother, who's 5 years younger, did have like a bigger group of Asian friends. And I don't know why. It's like just that split of generation. I think he traveled to China a lot more. I sort of like lost touch with everyone and didn't have that many sort of Chinese friends. Now, a lot of my best friends are Asian. And I wish I had that support growing up, because listening to your podcast sometimes, talking about the difficulties of growing up in the UK, I had no one to talk to that about. But you know, the difference in culture. So you're taught not to answer back at home. But at school, that's how they encourage you to question the teacher, ask questions, which I didn't really know how to do them. It would have been nice to have a Chinese friend say, you feeling the same? Are you navigating this? And so I think I had to find my way just on my own, really.
Hello everybody, welcome to Eastern Honey Season 2. Today we have a very special guest, Vivien Wong. You may know her from Little Moons. She's a founder girl. But thank you so much for being here today. It's truly an honor. You're fabulous.
Thank you.
And we can't wait to get into it. As per tradition, Mel is going to intro Vivien, and here we go.
Vivien Wong, co-founder of Little Moons, the Japanese-inspired mochi ice cream dessert that has become a global sensation, was raised in northwest London. Together with her brother Howard, Vivien grew up in her parents' bakery in London and quickly inherited a passion for making amazing food. They learned that it's the little things that make a big difference, like sourcing the best ingredients and constantly experimenting with new techniques and flavors. After studying business economics and working as a chartered accountant, in 2010, Vivien and her brother Howard decided to revolutionize the ice cream market with frozen mochi and launched Little Moons. Little Moons is now globally loved, and Vivien and her brother have won multiple awards, both for their leadership and for their incredible brand. Today, we'll discuss building a global business, the secret to great mochi, entrepreneurship, and Asian representation. Vivien Wong, welcome to Eastern Honeys.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, in your own words, please could you just introduce yourself and your background?
I feel like my journey through life so far has definitely been one that started quite traditionally. Very well behaved. Chinese daughter, trained as a chartered accountant, went to work in the city and decided it wasn't really for me. I'm glad for the experience, but I'm so happy to have followed my passion, like my parents, into food. And I think that mirrors my personal life as well, and changes in how I grew and during that journey. And I never ever thought that Little Moons would ever be as big as it is. So if I can do it, then anyone can do it. And I hope to encourage any Asian entrepreneur to give it a go.
I was going to say that I first heard your story when you were speaking on a Prince's Trust panel where I had a business that supported me. And I was saying to Isabel when we asked you to come on the pod that you were such a pivotal filling in of the gap as an Asian woman in business and as a British Asian woman in business, because those things are really different. Yeah, just thank you so much for being that person. Can you share the story of building Little Moons, how you got the idea, what you and Howard set out doing, and kind of those early days before you blew up into what it is now?
Something that's quite unique about our story is that we were self-funded up until 3 years ago. So that was 12 years of growing the business to quite a large size before we got investment from a private equity house. I think that's quite, that reflects really our Asian mentality of not borrowing money, doing it on your own. And when you say hustle, we absolutely had to do everything. Like no job was too small for us. So we did all the packing, labeling. I was like head IT guy, I'm all the main stuff. Yeah, I'm useless at IT. So we started in restaurants, we started in food service. I would go to new restaurants and go and meet the chef and ask, are you interested in mochi ice cream? And it was sort of, that was the level of sales that we did. We sort of pounded the streets to go meet chefs. Then we were in the factory as well making it. So I was sat at our machines, like rolling mochi as they came off the production line and packing them. So we knew absolutely every part of the process from start to finish. And I worked on the recipe with my father before he died. I feel like it's massively his legacy because we grew up in a bakery, like I mentioned, my parents' bakery, watching them craft traditional Asian desserts. So I definitely took the values of that into Little Moons. So when we started designing the recipes for Little Moons together with my dad, it was all about quality of product. And it was like when my parents made products for their business, Sunfin Bakery, it was like the consumer was their guest And so the same with Little Moons, I have to sit here and watch people eat it. And so I want to be proud of it. I want to see consumers loving and really enjoying what they eat. And I guess that's the whole ethos, really, from doing everything yourself, the quality of product, all of that has sort of shaped what Little Moons has become.
That's such a beautiful journey and something we can definitely resonate with, being like do-it-yourselfers, especially from a Filipino background, whereas there's not many, I guess, like founders or directors as of yet in like our space in London in the UK. So that's really inspiring to hear that.
But, you know, I was inspired by my mom. So my mom started the bakery because when she came over here as an Asian woman, I think she found it any woman would have found it hard back in the 70s to have children and to work at the same time. So you don't have the same employment law rights as you do now. So if I was ever sick, she'd have to lie and say she was ill so she could stay at home to take care of me. And in the end, it was just difficult. It was difficult to juggle that journey. So she started making traditional cakes at home in our kitchen.
Wow.
And her first customer was Chewy in Chinatown.
Wow.
And she made, I think, 8 boxes of her peanut dainties and then took it down there. And they said, okay, we'll buy it and see if anyone buys them. She sold out in a week. And that's really how she started the business. And so she started the business so that she could take care of me, her daughter. And then she started that business. And she's been absolutely my inspiration on how to do everything. She is the best mom, wife, businesswoman, and I just learned so much about running a business through her.
When did you decide to leave accounting and I guess like the corporate day job to pursue Little Moons? And were they supportive? I guess they were, because your mother did the same thing.
I think my mum gave me very different advice to my brother. So as a woman, she said, it's going to be difficult for you to work, particularly if you've gone into work in the city. It's going to be difficult to have children and have a full-on career. So she always tried to encourage me to start my own business. Whereas with my brother, I think she was just like, no, you should work in the city. So for me choosing to leave my job at Barclays Capital, she was happy with it. It was absolutely, not encouraged, but it wasn't discouraged. And so she was very proud. And I think it was a real baptism of fire. I remember the day I left, I was wearing my Ugg boots to the office, slouching around. Like suddenly I didn't have to wear stilettos and sort of like pencil skirts. And my mum was like, I think you need to make a bit more of an effort when you come to work, like stop wearing Uggs. But then, having to do everything from scratch. So she said, go get some books, learn how to make ice cream. And I did. And you just sit there mixing it and you could just tell recipes tasted better when you had more natural ingredients, don't use flavorings. And you just, you had to work out your recipe. And she just left me to get on with that. And then I also did an ice cream course at Reading University. So it was very much go figure it out for yourself. And she was obviously there in the background. But yeah, that's absolutely how you learn to do things. And I'd obviously learned sitting at the dinner table with my parents running their bakery. When you do deliveries, if you've missed a delivery, that's it. You drive it up north yourself. If you've missed a pickup for a Manchester customer, you get in the car and you drive up there because you couldn't let your customers down. That sort of business grounding that I think I found at Little Moons.
Incredible. I think we should show the people what your parents' bakery actually is, because everyone will recognize this. Because this is so historic. When everyone in this room, who are all Asian, by the way, saw this, we were gagged, because this is such a staple in all of our households.
Okay.
So can you just tell us about the heritage and how you've kind of built this alongside Little Moons with your family?
So this is the business that my mum started back in 1985, and she started it at her kitchen and at just a few products. And my father started helping her I think maybe 5 years later, because as it got more and more successful, it started in our kitchen. And so, I think back in the 80s, they didn't have so much sort of health and safety checks. So you could start a business in your kitchen. And then she slowly rented a factory. And so it was tiny, when I say factory, like a tiny sort of room where you could have, set up proper production. And her and my dad would just work all night. I remember them developing mochi. It was really hard for them to develop it because they bought the machine. Production errors, there's so much problem solving when you have a bakery and things, and just watching them develop recipes, and they had things to talk about, and just they loved doing this business together. As I grew up, I think when I started doing my chartered accountancy, their business was I don't know how many years, 20 years old. And I think that the government was really great in that they sent EHO over to check that the quality was correct and the way that you were manufacturing was good manufacturing practices. And my mum didn't really know or have the patience to deal with the paperwork. So I don't know if people know Crescent baking powder. It comes in like a really nice tin, like a really nice jar. And so my mum would use the same tin when she's finished baking powder to put salt or sesame seeds or something.
Classic.
Yeah. As you just
Giving
musician. Absolutely. Like, why would you go and buy like brand new packaging when you've got this brilliant tin packaging? And then the EHO would come over and say, well, you can't put the salt. You can't put salt in a sort of baking powder tray. And my mum was like, didn't say anything to them, but after she was just like, who would be so dumb to mix up salt with baking powder? Like no one in our business would ever would put salt in thinking it was baking powder. And I'm like, yeah, but I kind of understand where they're coming from. So it was just like where my Western upbringing with my chartered accountancy learning, where you learn about systems and why things are done in a certain way to sort of apply that to the factory early doors. And so I guess that was my first learning of how to run a factory properly. So, you know, with all the hygienes and all the sort of systems that you need to make food, that's where I started helping my mum. So after I did my chartered accountancy, I would go for evening school that the government had run all these classes to learn how to manufacture food properly, and I'd help my parents with that.
Damn. Wow. The immigrant hustle is
It's wild.
Yeah. It's definitely like a prevalent theme within season 1 and 2.
Obviously, you must work so closely with your brother all the time and your parents too. Like you develop the recipes with your dad and with your mum. Like where's your family dynamic?
So I think in terms of a family business, so many people say, how can you work with your brother? We'll talk about that a little bit later. But with my parents, I think they were really, they just knew to give us space. There was no point in bringing me into the business and then continuing to do things their way. And I obviously brought some skills with me as well. And they really respected that. So they gave me space to go and develop. And then they also taught me I'd already learned how hard they work and how they manage their businesses. And obviously Asian management techniques are slightly different to the management techniques that you've learned in sort of like a professional environment. Yeah. So that was something that we blended together and learned how to do, how you discipline or give feedback, things like that. And so that was something that I brought into my parents' business, which we've continued to run all through Little Moons. But then I knew that I wouldn't leave my own career just to run Sun Fern. I wanted to build something of my own, hence Little Moons. And my parents very much gave us space to spend a lot of money on branding when it finally came to that, because they've never spent tens of thousands of pounds on packaging, for example. It was their own design. So it was stuff like that they trusted us to spend the money to get returns on that. And spending money on social and PR is nothing they've ever used, but we spent a huge amount of money on that when we initially started, building the Little Moons as a brand. And then, so boundary wise, I actually look back so fondly that I was able to spend so much time with, I say in the past because my father passed in 2018. But having time to work with him was just so incredible, because not many people do. You don't realize. I read this book where they said something like your life is 4,000 weeks. Whoa. And then by the time, I don't know, by the time you're, I don't know, in 40s like now, and my mum is nearly 80. So she's 76 now. Some people only see their parents like twice a year. Yeah. That means that you're going to see your mum for another 8 times. What are you going to say to her before she dies at 80? And so when you put time into perspective like that, I'm so lucky I sat down and had lunch with my mum and dad every day. I'm so lucky that I got to spend so much time with them, because I genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. They weren't parents that sort of were quite suffocating, and I think genuinely enjoyed spending time with them. And then with my brother, I never really thought about it, because we were such a close family growing up. Because my parents were working all the time, I had to take care of my brother and bring him up pretty much, and make sure we all did our homework together. It didn't feel unnatural to have to spend so much time together. And I think as the business has grown, with working so closely with Howard, our relationship definitely has changed, because we only ever talk about business. For the last couple of years, we've only talked about business. And I think you see each other every day. You don't want to see each other at weekend. Family dinners are just kind of like, and then you talk about work again. And then you're not really in the mindset to say, so how is your wife or your girlfriend, who you dating? It just sort of changes it. And so I think now that we brought in a CEO to run Little Moons, and we've both taken a step back from the business, it's really nice to spend time together again, just as siblings. So I took him for a track day for his birthday. I spent the whole day just driving cars around the track. That was so lovely. We drove up together, we chatted about stuff. And so it's really nice that our relationship's now going back to a more sibling, brother-sister relationship rather than business partners, because it has, it's been tough. I think at the very beginning, it was really hard when we hadn't divided our responsibilities. And then we had a non-executive director that sort of recommended that we do a personality test. So we did insights, which is our hard. Found out we were absolute complete opposites. So after we did the insight test, it gives you a narrative on how you can work best with people that are complete opposite to you. And when I read it, it made complete sense why my brother and I sometimes clashed, because of the way we communicated and the way we misunderstood each other. And so I think with any business partner that you choose, brother, sister, or just a friend, it's really interesting to know what their personality is like and how they work best. And actually across the whole of Little Moons now, everyone in the business has an insight test. So you put it on our URL so you can see what they're like. Like, are they red? Are they green? So you just understand them better.
That's something Melissa and I are actually like navigating, working together, being friends. Yesterday, we just had a friend evening.
We went for dinner, ramen, and it was just a circuit breaker because it's just every conversation devolves into work. Right. It's like, how are you? Have you watched that thing on Netflix? Did you send that email to Thingy? And have you followed up with? And then that's it.
It changes the dynamic
completely. So we're like, we have to have like friend days and check-ins and
clear communication.
Being able to work with family. I consider you like a cousin, a sister. I think it's when you go into a corporate environment and you're working in what was basically like a British hierarchy or whatever, there's just so much that is, you have to be performative and navigate. Whereas with family, they just get it and you can be yourself and just get on with the work rather than also have to hold yourself to the standard and accountability and like conversations about things about, I don't know, cricket or the football, which is just, not what you want to be talking about.
You can just be yourself.
Exactly.
In family. Yeah.
Which is really special, especially when working on Eastern Honeys, which is something so emotional and like so purpose driven. It's nice to work with someone that gets it.
Circling back to you growing up, something you said to us was that you didn't have an Asian crew growing up. So can you just tell us a bit about like your upbringing?
I think back then there wasn't Facebook. It was really hard to meet up with people. Where would I meet Asian friends? I had Chinese school.
Okay.
But it was only on a Sunday, and it's hard to meet someone that has exactly the same interests as you. But my brother, who's 5 years younger, did have like a bigger group of Asian friends, and I don't know why. It's like just that split of generation. He did. I think he traveled to China a lot more. Did you know that Taiwan tour, like Love Boat, loads of Asians went on?
Oh, does that rings a bell?
Yeah. So I went to Taiwan for I think like a week or something. Met with loads of other Chinese kids from all over the world, like Taiwan, Canada, Netherlands. And my brother was able to keep in touch with them. So I just feel like he made more of an effort, I guess. Maybe that's what it was. He made more of an effort to keep in touch with them. I sort of like lost touch with everyone and didn't have that many sort of Chinese friends. But now a lot of my best friends are Asian. And I wish I had that support growing up, because listening to your podcast sometimes, talking about the difficulties of growing up in the UK, I had no one to talk to that about. The difference in culture. So you're taught not to answer back at home, but at a school, that's how they encourage you to question the teacher. Put your hand up, sort of, ask questions, which I didn't really know how to do them. It would be nice to have a Chinese friend to say, "Are you feeling the same? Are you navigating this?" And so I think I had to find my way just on my own, really.
So did we, largely, especially as an Asian woman. So much happens to you. People say things to you. There are a lot more experiences when you're a woman that are layered with like racial subtext as well. And it is lonely because your parents can't understand what it is to be raised in Britain, right? And also with the communication styles, maybe. We definitely resonate and relate.
I think one of your guests said, my mum would have been like, just ignore it and just move on.
Yeah.
And that's how she would ask me to deal with it. Yeah. Whereas I think one of your guests said, but that's shown as a sign of weakness because you judged me.
Mr. Lee.
Yeah. And I totally get that. I think my brother sees that too. Like you have to call it out.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I had the courage or people were doing that back in the day. But now definitely more people have a voice, more Asians have a voice to call things out.
Yeah.
Which is only a good thing.
True. We have the tools and the vocabulary now to recognize that back in the day, it was a...
I feel like it was protected as well. Like there's a community behind you if you were to say something, whereas in the past, I don't think.
I feel like the internet's been a really good like democratizing tool for like racism and giving community, whereas we didn't have any community growing up.
No, not really.
Yeah.
I would love to ask you about where you get your confidence from, if that was okay.
Where do I get my confidence from?
Yeah.
I have built up my confidence slowly as my business has grown, as I've, had to employ more and more people and manage all of those things. I think as you live outside of your comfort zone and you didn't die, you made it through,
So here we go.
I think there's some mornings where you wake up when you're running your business and you're just like, right, okay, like honestly, I have no idea how we're going to fix this problem. For example, when Little Moons grew really quickly, in the middle of COVID, no one was making more machinery. You couldn't fit more people in the factory. How do you make more product? And, a piece of machinery is broken down. It's going to take 6 weeks to order one from Asia or whatever. Like, what do you do in that time? So I think as you grow in confidence because you've been able to problem solve and get through it on your own, you slowly grow confidence. But I've also had a ton of therapy and lots of executive coaching. And I think I have a growth mindset, a curiosity to read. And I see people that I think are super confident. And I think, how are they so confident? And I like how they react and I learn from them. And I guess fake it until you make it. But you just see certain elements of different people and you think, I want to get to where they are.
Wow. Like hearing that from you is really inspiring. Like off camera, we were just sharing maybe like how growing up we're a bit like more shy or less confident. So I really resonate with your journey.
Yeah.
And speaking personally, when I started working in teaching spaces, I used to work as a tutor at CSM doing fashion styling course. And I want to say that gave me the confidence to like step into my own and like feel confident enough to like say something out loud and students receive it and then be like, oh, that's actually, I don't know, it just gave me so much power because I think growing up, especially like Asian and a girl in London, the 90s, yeah, it's just not having a crew, especially in the area that I grew up in, was quite isolating. So it is just really great now we have our own crew and like we're asking other guests to come on and speak about their experiences and seeing that, wow, it's actually really similar is really like affirming.
And I think if you're going to thrive in this community, you do have to pick up the skills that will allow you to thrive, such as confidence and speaking up and asking questions and saying no.
Saying no.
What a big lesson to learn with that. And I think that's where you realize that if you're to thrive as a person or if your business is going to thrive, no one is going to stand up for you or your business except for you. And so you owe it to your business to have the confidence to stand up for it. Amazing. And I think also just watching my parents grow their bakery, I've seen many examples where they've been disrespected.
Yeah.
Or my mother didn't have the vocabulary to challenge. And so she always used to say to me, I really want to give you the power of communication. So she wanted me to go to debating society, which I never did. But I think, just growing up in an English school, speaking English like I do, gives me a lot more confidence and power to challenge other people where I didn't think she felt that she had the ability to do so. And I think people viewed her very differently because she has a slight Chinese accent and people just, and I used to see it as a child and you could see it, which is why I was so sensitive to it. And I would never want anyone who works for Little Moons to feel like that because we have our own factory. I employ people who haven't gone to university, who are all immigrants, where English is no way their first language. Maybe it could be their third, but how brilliant that they speak 3 different languages. And I want them to feel welcomed and respected, even though they can't communicate as well as an English person.
It's so frustrating that in Britain, if you can't speak English well, the assumption is that, well, they're stupid. It's like, no, this person has a doctorate and a law degree. Yeah, they've come to the UK because their country is war-torn. They're not, they are in no capacity stupid, but it's just an arrogant colonial perception. The success of Little Moons is the tip of the iceberg. It's what people see and are obsessed with. But what are some of the challenges that you navigate day to day, especially in mochi world, that people just have no idea that you're part of and go through?
I think manufacturing our own mochi in our own factory just brings so much pain with inverted commas, just people not turning up to work, for example, like the machinery breakdowns or anything that can go wrong, could go wrong, sometimes does go wrong during the day. For example, I used to have to drive to Tesco's to buy milk off the shelf there because we didn't get a delivery from the dairy, for example. So I just think then you need to have resilience, or anyone who's starting their own business just needs that resilience to constantly problem solve. And we were talking about systems before, and I think you were running your own business and you said, about running your own skincare business. Yeah. And then it wasn't just the creative of coming up with the beautiful packaging and then the idea. The day-to-day of running a business is just monotonous. Accounting, payroll every week, export, like how I understand legal, employment law, all of that stuff that's neither sexy nor fun is an absolute must if your business is going to be successful, working out cash flow, all sorts of things like that, which isn't a sexy part of running a business at all. And I think a lot of people don't realize how much work, that sort of work goes on behind a creative brand. There's also the fun stuff like sales and marketing. 100% fun, but there is so much more that goes beneath that.
When Little Moons really hit it off and became viral on TikTok during the COVID-19 pandemic, how did you navigate the sudden urge and demand, especially with potential supply chain disruptions and all of that jazz?
I can only put it down to the strength of my team, and I can only thank my team for doing it, because without them, we wouldn't have Little Moons. And we've had the person who's our site manager now at our factories has been with us for almost 15 years. So I love watching him grow from a boy to a man, learning that journey. He started with me in our factory rolling mochi, and then he learned how to manage an engineering team and all sorts of, hygiene team, production team. He's grown with the business, and it's been so wonderful to watch. Him and all the other people that have worked with me for a really long time were instrumental in bringing on, I think at one time we had 4 new people for every one person that had worked for us for a while. And so just teaching people how to make mochi during that period, because we didn't have systems in place. We didn't have instruction manuals because we didn't think we needed to. We'd never grown that quickly before, so we actually hadn't written it down. And I often say that the hardest part during that journey of the pain of growth there, the growing pains of that period, was that you don't grow to the level of your ambitions, you fall to the level of your systems. That's from James Clear, Atomic Habits. And I don't think he means it to be applied in that way. I think he means for it your daily habits. But for me as a business, we had these huge ambitions. And the reason why we just couldn't hit them during that time is because we didn't have systems in place. I didn't have the HR systems to bring on that many people on a daily basis. I didn't have training manuals to train that many people in such a short amount of time. My warehouse team just couldn't cope with suddenly 250 pallets coming into our warehouse every day, when before it was 20. So it was very difficult to grow because we didn't have the systems in place. And so putting those systems in place while we were growing so quickly just made it near impossible.
Thank you for your transparency. It's so refreshing and illuminating. I'm sure you as well resonate. Connecting with the right people and the people that get your vision is honestly one of the best things about working on a business together.
It really takes the right people. I mean, systems and stuff help scale, but it's people who drive a business and a brand forward.
I think the hardest part of the journey for Little Moons is that the people that were right for the business to begin with weren't necessarily right for the business as it is now. And so saying goodbye to those people is quite heart-wrenching. And that was probably the hardest part of the growth of Little Moons. But it's better for them, and it's better for us. If you're a startup person, and truthfully, I'm a startup person at heart. I love startups because the role that you have once you're a much bigger business is so different, and your role is much less varied. It's a lot more specialized. And if you're not enjoying it, it doesn't mean that you've failed. It just means that you're so much better at the sort of scrappy startup stage. And actually, the person that maybe takes the role over from you would never have survived the scrappy startup stage. However, they're really good at just doing this one part of your job over and over again every day. So that, that's definitely been a lesson that I've had to learn as my team has changed, as it's grown.
In terms of growth and scaling, a lot of that comes with innovation. So you've just launched Little Moons into frozen cheesecakes.
Yes, delicious.
And I mean, I work in Paris a lot, and seeing Little Moons there, it's in every single supermarket. People buying it next to macarons. And I'm like, this is incredible. How do you balance what is a very traditional Asian dessert or treat with Western innovation and making things exciting while still honouring kind of that foundation of quality that your parents' bakery sowed?
I think that mochi ice cream, Little Moons itself, is just a mixture of culture. So the mochi I find is very traditional, and I'm incredibly pernickety about that. And I think if you eat any other, and I will say any other mochi ice cream company internationally, the American ones, Spanish, French companies that make it, I don't think their mochi is quite right. It's either too hard, it tastes like bread, it's crumbly, it tastes too much like tapioca flour. I love our mochi because I think it melts in your mouth and it's that perfect mouthfeel for me. And the thickness as well is quite thin. I like that. But then our ice cream, so we do have some Asian flavors, mango, yuzu, green tea. And then we do have more international flavors. Like when we launched in Australia, we did iced coffee because that's quite big down there. But I think the red thread through all of this is just equality. If you're going to make a coffee, make it the best tasting coffee flavor you can make. Exactly the same sort of ethos as if we're going to make a mango or a matcha flavor. In fact, I think we get reviews I've read it on Ocado where people say, this tastes too green tea. And
That's the point.
Okay, but fine. I'd much rather they say that than like, I can't, this is such a nondescript flavor. I can't even quite place what it is. And that's with every single one of our flavors. I want to be able to close my eyes and know exactly what fruit it is, take you back. Like the mango has to taste like chilled Alfonso mango, super sweet, slightly floral, a little bit of like spiciness to it, and just take you back to when you're eating a fresh mango. But ours is in our ice cream. Same as chocolate. We put so much chocolate in our chocolate ice cream. So
Coconut one's incredible.
And then coconut really tastes like coconut. Pistachio. So our pistachio is about 7% pistachio paste with pieces in. Whereas if you look at other brands, Magnum, 2%. 2%. Yeah. But those brands don't have real milk in it. They don't do real milk. They don't put real cream. Wow. They're using reconstituted skim milk powder with water added. And so if you think about the quality, the mouthfeel and the flavor, why is Little Moons like a bit more expensive than other ice cream brands? It's because we're buying real milk and cream from the dairies in the UK and not just mixing water with milk powder. The amount of product, like the amount of flavor that we put in, like pistachio or mango, whatever it is, it's like a big percentage of our recipe compared to other people that would just maybe put artificial flavorings even. So that is my ethos.
My partner's Japanese and he loves Little Moons. He was like, can I live stream in while you're talking to Vivien? But he's like, it's the thinness of the Little Moons but the chewiness, in his words, the structural integrity of the time it takes for the ice cream. He's a product design engineer to melt out of the fridge. Everything is so well constructed as a food product. And I think, that's just really evident, especially like with the success of Little Mints.
And it tastes very fresh. Yeah. I like it. Yeah.
What
do you look out for when tasting like good ice cream? And can you share any tips?
I think it's like wine. It's like what you like, but does the pistachio actually taste of pistachio? Or does it have like an undertone of almond, which is much cheaper and used as a filler, for example? And I think the aftertaste is quite important too, because sometimes I've eaten a vanilla and afterwards you get this sort of aftertaste and you're like, that is definitely a really cheap vanilla that they've used, like not even an extract, like almost an extract of an extract. And so I think you can tell when something tastes real and fresh and then artificial. And I think it's all about mindful eating. So like Little Moons is tiny, but perfectly formed and the flavour is all there. So I'd much rather eat something small like that than like a massive tub of cheap ice cream because for the volume and things like that. So I think it's about finding the products where you know about the brand, read about the brand, what are the values of that brand, and then you can often taste why it's different. Like some hazelnuts that you get from Italian chocolates, it tastes so different to other cheaper brands of hazelnut. It's non-price toasted or olive oil, all of that. And so I think if you do, you just learn from tasting that actually this tastes a bit better than this one. And there's usually a reason for that.
I'm like the same, but with like clothes. I'd rather have like few clothes, but like good quality clothes rather than like loads of clothes.
Craftsmanship.
Exactly. Yeah. And how it falls and the cut makes such a difference.
It really does.
And I think it's when you learn it. So I guess when you eat with your foodie friends, like they teach you why. Like you've just asked about ice cream, you should really learn a bit. But if you hang out with people that know about clothes, and my mum used to make her own clothes, she'll feel things and say, oh, you see this cut, how the seam doesn't quite match. And you just start educating. And I think it's just like in London, you meet so many interesting people. Ask them why, exactly about what would make, why this cashmere is better than the other cashmere. Or certain people will know certain brands pile faster than others.
Do you think there's an avenue when you expand the flavors outside of like Asian flavors of Little Moons, like being from like London as well? Like we're so connected with other cultures. Yeah. Is there an avenue there for that?
Absolutely. I feel like that's why we've done pistachio, which is Italy. I went to Sicily and found in Bronte is the best place to get pistachios. So you travel around and you find out all these different flavors. Like yuzu is so great. So yuzu is one of our original flavors, like from 15 years ago. And now it's everywhere. But I think I like how you travel through food. When I go to different countries, I always eat in the really traditional places. I want to go to the street corner places. And that's sort of like the ethos that Little Moons brings. So if we do travel, if we do bring a flavour out, we want it to be the best that we can make it.
We are fingers crossing for an ube flavoured mochi.
Okay.
That we would die happy. Just putting it out there.
Okay. Noted.
And we're in a ube.
And you're right.
Yeah, that might happen.
Or taro. Ube
This
taro.
is a tropical mochi. This is a tropical flavour.
Yeah, we are here for it. And I always buy the passion fruit because it's purple. I'm like, one day this might be ube. But okay. So Little Moons won the Department of Business and Trade's Made in the UK Sold to the World Award. How important is it for you to be made in the UK, and why haven't you made the decision to outsource somewhere cheaper?
The only reason why we haven't outsourced it cheaper is because we want to control the quality. And our recipe is also proprietary. So I don't want to teach someone else how to make our dough, because then they'd go make it for loads of other brands too. Like we've said no to own brand because we're only here to make it for Little Moons brand. And that's just a commercial decision. Like other people can choose to outsource it if they want to. But I think if you make something that's so unique, like mochi, it is hard to find another factory to make it. If you are doing tea, or if you're making, I don't know, another product like peanut butter that someone else can make, sometimes if you're not going to add any real value to that process, then don't start your own factory, because it's expensive and it takes your attention away from the branding and the marketing, which is really important when you're building a brand. There was no one else to make mochi, so that's why.
In terms of branding and marketing, what was the biggest shift you did in like a rebrand that really pushed the brand forward?
Previously, the lettering for Little Moons was different. It was
Like handwritten.
It was more scrolly.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll send you a picture if you want to put it up.
We'll put it up here.
And it didn't have a picture of the product on the front. And I think it just didn't look quite as luxe. And so when we rebranded it and put the block colours in, it just made the brand pop with the colour, and also the logo that we have now with the two O's that look like mochis that are cut in half.
Yeah.
Like always said, we need to put a cut mochi in the front so you can see, so consumers can see exactly what they're buying, because we're still educating people. I think we've got like 13% awareness in the whole of the UK, so we still have a long way to go. So it's always still about packvertising, because that is your main storefront that people are going to see the product first, more than anywhere on social or in any adverts.
Can you share with us like the name? Where did that derive from?
So the name came from a branding agency that we went with. And so if you've gone through a branding process, often they'll give you a few choices. Okay. And so we had a few choices, but Little Moons really stuck out to us. And I think it was a Japanese fable where I think it was something like this. Don't quote me, but I think there was like a monkey, a rabbit, and a fox. And they were in the woods together, and a god came down from the moon and dressed up as a beggar and asked for some help. And so the monkey went to get some water. With the fox went and got some wood so that they could light a fire. And the rabbit thought, there's nothing I can bring to add value here. So he threw himself on the fire to sacrifice himself for food for the beggar. He was so touched by the selflessness of the rabbit that he revered him. And so the Japanese believe that there's a rabbit on the moon pounding mochi. And so if you look it up on Wikipedia or something, that there is sort of an image there where it looks like there's a rabbit with two ears and a little face like pounding mochi with a traditional custard Yorkshire. And so that's where sort of like that fable, they look like Little Moons because they're sort of orbular, they're all quite different, like a bit of a ridge on the skin, plus this fable. They sort of the creators just came up with this name, and we just thought it was a really adorable name and memorable, and that's how we came up with it.
I feel like so much is in a name, and it makes or breaks people's perception of you. Or like you can have an amazing brand name, but if the brand visuals don't match, it's just not going to be a goer.
It's so hard, isn't it, to get it just right?
It's wild. And the amount of money, eye-watering money that people will spend with agency just to get something right it's money well spent, especially in food, which is so trend-led and visual. Like you do need to invest time in that.
Totally. And that's where, when we first started Little Moons, the first 5 years, we only sold to restaurants as a white label product. So we'd sell it to sushi, Wagamamas, Nobu, places like that. And we did that all across Europe as well. And so that was where we were earning money, but saving it up, because branding can be £100,000 out or 6 months. That's a nice strategy. And so when you first start off, we didn't have the money, with no funding. We didn't have the money to spend on that. So we went to a really good branding agency, and they cost money. And that's how we sort of financed it by the first 5 years of food service. So when I was working at the bakery for my parents, I used to have to deliver to, the Chinese supermarkets like Wingyet, Lungfeng, Hohing, just watching how, so Wingyet was the first one that looked like a Tesco's. And when you deliver back of house, the people that worked in their warehouse would be so systematic in terms of checking the quality of the product, checking the best before date, checking the labeling, checking the barcode, that all of these things they would check. And I thought, how has Wingyet trained their staff so well to do their job so well? And I wish my guys in my warehouse would then check sugar bags coming in without like cuts in them, or they're all, and I just thought that's such a great management, I don't know, like structure that they have. And I wanted Sunfeng to be more like them. They were the first ones that would start sending out questionnaires to their suppliers. So us asking, how do you manage your stock? How do you deal with quality? How do you deal with health and safety? And you'd have to fill all these questions up. And so purely by asking a question, you kind of had to put a policy in place. So you could say to them, yes, I have a policy. And I think it was that sort of way of holding other people to account makes you a better business too, because if you didn't have these systems in place, they wouldn't buy it from you just so that you could continue supplying them and existing as a business. It just forced you to be better. And I really liked that. They all had different culture. So Lungfeng, when you went there, like how the staff greeted you was very different to Ho Hing, and the way the payments were made, all great, but very different in culture. And it was just interesting to see that firsthand, and then applying that to your own business and thinking, I want to take this from Lungfeng, I want to take this from Wingyet, I want to take this from Ho Hing, and then put it into your business. And that's how I sort of thought, this is how I can scale my business. Because Wingyet and Lungfeng, they have so many massive stores all over the UK. And that was like the first, I guess, the big Chinese businesses that I knew about that were growing down there. Yeah, I think there was a gene company that was like Hong Kong founded, but I didn't know the founder, and you didn't really get an insight as how it was run. But because I was doing these deliveries to all of these supermarkets, you could really see close up how well run they were.
It's really cool as well, because Wingyet and Lungfeng, they're like cornerstones of the Asian people in the UK. But now there's Osayo, there's Longdan. It's really nice to see these smaller ones popping up.
Exactly.
Because now, even for me, like I don't have a car, so I can't drive to Wingyet. But now I just pop into like Osayo or like Longdan and stuff, and that's really accessible.
I read in the Sunday Times that Asian supermarkets are absolutely blowing up. So they're becoming more and more popular, and more Caucasians going there to do their weekly shop.
Yeah.
I absolutely love. One, it means that more people are buying Asian groceries to cook these things at home, which means everything's opening up, and food is so important.
They're on Oxford Street as well.
Sharing culture. Yes. And I absolutely love that. So I think they're doing a great job to help us with our culture, sort of education as well.
Do you ever see like a brick and mortar type of spot for Little Moons?
We did have a place in Selfridges. It was supposed to be in pop-up for a month, and we stayed there for 8 years.
Wow. Over there, you say. Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. And then we still have our place in Westfield, where you can go try all of our flavours. So it's a really good place to go and try them.
Is it one of the, yeah. Actually, I think I've been to that.
Yeah.
What do you love about Asian dessert, and what are some of your favourites?
I don't think there's an Asian dessert that I don't like. I love that our desserts aren't too sweet. Loads of Asian people say that.
That's like the phrase, isn't it?
And typically, but I absolutely get that. And I love red beans. I love dal sao bang. I don't know them in English. I don't
Go
know
for it.
English, but the sort of like fried mochi dough, and it's a bit crispy with red bean inside. Tofu fa, the tofu, which is really soft and silky with sugar. My mum has it bubur cha cha. I think it's like a Malaysian dessert where it's lots of coconut milk, yam, sago. Loads of that sort of sweet potato. Love stuff.
Do you have Malaysian heritage?
My parents, both of them, were born in Malaysia. They're Malaysian Chinese, but I think that's just in my DNA. Love durian, love all of the sort of hawker food stuff. That's what my mum used to cook at home. So I think that makes me a different Chinese to Hong. You know what I mean? You know how it's all these different. Yeah. I'm definitely a Malaysian Chinese girl.
Ever a durian mochi, or do you think that's?
I used to make the durian mochi ice cream. So I used to buy the fresh durian. And actually the frozen I felt like had more consistency. Like ripeness was actually more consistent. And then just mix that into the ice cream. And I made small batches of it. Maybe for a special, I don't know, but we haven't been doing small batches as we've gotten bigger and bigger, mainly for cost reasons. We definitely did small runs of it when we were a lot smaller.
If you were to turn one British dessert into a mochi ice cream, what would it be?
I love apple crumble. Would that hands late? Maybe. No, but you like them hot and like, this is originally what else? Knickerbockerdori. I don't know.
Yeah.
What, like custard? It has to be hot, right?
Yeah.
I love custard.
Oh, yeah, custard.
But cold custard, I'm not sure. Is that like a creme brulee? If that's French.
And honestly, I'm like thinking, but also what pie is this? Does it like trifle?
Sticky toffee pudding.
That would be a really good flavour ice cream.
An interesting innovation.
Not sticky toffee pudding. Again, but it's hot.
Yeah, it is.
We did an East Mess. We did do an Eastern Mess. I think it was an exclusive for Waitrose, but we've stopped doing that now. So we do some sort of exclusive flavours that go in and come out.
That's a very Waitrose flavour.
Is it? Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. Is it Battenberg cake or something? It really was. And then we did a popcorn, which is just coming out. And then our cinnamon bun has come in.
Ooh, yeah.
And so we've got new ones working on new flavours.
That's exciting.
Wow. You seem like you're so in love with Little Moons. It's like your baby, it's your business.
Yeah.
As a founder, how do you stay in love with your business?
I think you have to do what you find enjoyable in the business. There's definitely bits that I don't find enjoyable and I will outsource that to other people. There's been a long time where I did have to do it, but you can only do it for so long before it really starts getting you down. So I think know your strengths and focus on those bits. Know where you bring value to the business and where you're a drainer on the business and where you're holding it back, and make sure that you plug that role in with someone really, really good who loves that role, and you continue focusing on what you love and where you bring the energy. I think it's really hard for anyone to replace the founder because you bring an energy and a vision that's completely different to anyone else. So that's what Howard and I are focused on now, just making sure that we continue to channel our vision as founders, and our management team, our executive team, sharing that. That's kind of where we're at the moment.
LinkedIn just say like bringing the vibes, Little Moons.
Yeah. Someone call me Chief Vibe Officer, and I love
that. So second question, and to close this gorgeous episode, if you were to write a love letter to diaspora, what would you say?
I would say just embrace yourself, like love your differences, embrace your differences. It was something that I used to be not ashamed of, but you just weren't loud about it. And now we can say, yes, chewy, squishy things are delicious. So everyone shares it, right? So, and people used to think that raw fish was disgusting. Now everyone would feel uncouth that they don't know how to eat sushi or don't know how to use chopsticks. So I think we need to continue to share our culture proudly, because particularly in this environment, I feel like there might be some, taking away of differences like DE&I, being a female, like different cultures. Like without my parents coming over, starting a business and paying tons in tax, and like I feel like we've definitely added to the fabric of society, done a little better. And I love London being a mixing pot. And I think that the problem doesn't come from immigrants. I think it comes from the way that our country is being managed, that people feel that they're having things taken away from them. Yeah. Whereas I think there is plenty of money to go into schools, to go into the NHS, because I think when there's a scarcity of resources, that's where you feel like you don't have enough. I think there's plenty for that, but I just don't think the money is being managed correctly without getting too political. But how can we not have enough money for schools to have an abundance of shoes,
libraries to close, for all these arts to be curved?
How did we spend billions on a track and trace system and it's just gone and that's it? Yeah, how did that happen?
I think we know how that happened,
but I think that we need to have some accountability and some integrity that I feel like all Asians diaspora have that.
We did, because our ancestors will.
Like the fact, and I don't want to shame our parents, like even that's still drive, but the drive that still serves us. So I would continue to feel really proud of that.
What a beautiful way to close. Beautiful and powerful.
Thank you so much, Vivien. You and your brother and your family have contributed to this cultural shift where being Asian was not cool and it was other. And now everyone is like so into mochi and Asian food and shopping in Asian supermarkets. And Little Moons has been such a profound part of that. Like to see young English families like picking up boxes of Little Moons and putting it in with their chicken and carrots is just so incredible, and it's like everything. So we want to thank you for the legacy you've left behind.
Honestly, really, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So Vivien, please let our audience know where to find you, where to find Little Moons. Do share to this camera over there.
Little Moons is stocked in all grocery stores and Asian supermarkets. And we're in 36 different countries. So if you're traveling, please check into a supermarket and take a photo if you see us there and post it on social. We're at Little Moons Mochi.
Amazing. Fabulous. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you guys for watching as well. Every single stream, like, share, subscribe means so much to us. It really helps the channel grow. We're so grateful you're on this learning journey with us. And I hope you're as inspired as we are by Vivien Wong's story. If you have any questions, slide in the DMs, drop a comment, do all that good stuff. And if you have any questions for us, our door is always open. So thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
Maraming salamat.
Thank you.